It's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Hey, everyone likes to be a hero, right? Well, today we get to be a hero fighting fire and trying to rescue victims in a cooperative game called Flashpoint Fire Rescue from Indie Boards and Cards. Now, it's a game that plays 2 to 6 players, 45 minutes to an hour usually. It has a family version, it has a experienced version, and it's an interesting way of working together to try to come to a common goal that we all can probably relate to. So let's check it out. Let's see how the mechanics play, how the roles, the different ways you can play it, and we'll check it out on the other side. Flashpoint comes with a very nice colored double-sided board where one side is sort of harder than the other, and really helps a lot with the replayability value of Flashpoint. Here we have the advanced game set up for 4 players, and in this game we've got 2 guys starting here, one there. We've got some explosions that happened at the beginning of the game, so there's some fire in there. We have some doors that start off being closed, and we have 3 what's called POIs, or points of interest, that are possibly victims. We're not sure if they are or not. Also, during some of the explosions, these black markers are sort of damage done to the walls, where if any spot gets 2 of these black markers, this is now an open passageway, just like as if it was a door. So what we're trying to do is rescue 7 victims and get them to the place where we have, over here where they are outside, safe, 7 of them, and we win. If 4 of them get burned or die, then we lose. Also, if all of the black cubes that are the damages, I believe there's 24 of them, if all of those get used up, the house, the structure is too bad, and it crumbles and we die inside it. Each person starts with a card showing what color fire person they are. They also get a summary sheet of showing what the actions they can do and how many action points each of those take. And everyone gets a special ability card. We'll go over these in more detail later. So by default, each firefighter gets 4 action points. Let's talk about some of the things you can do. Moving. Well, you can just move if there's no fire there. Moving one spot is 1 action point. Moving through fire. So if I was here and I'm trying to move through fire, because it's very hard to move in fire, each time I move through fire, it's 2 action points. Now, so I've moved 1 here, I can move 2 here, and when I get on a space with this, I flip it up. Ooh, in this case, it happens to be a victim, but it could be blank, it could be a false alarm. Now, since I'm carrying a person, anytime I carry them 1 spot, it's 2 action points because it's harder to carry. So we did 1, 2, 3, 4, and then my move is over for the red person. Now, typically what happens is, now we would roll for the fire to advance. So on the dice we have here a red, black, and a black dice. It's a 6-sided dice and a 8-sided dice. So you roll both of these. Now you'll see on the outside we have these red dice marks, and on the other side they're black. And we see it is 3 and 5. So we go 3 here, 5 there, and a fire would go there. Ooh, when fire goes on fire, we have an explosion. So let's talk about explosions. Anytime a fire explodes, it goes off in every direction. Now, so we look up and down. So it can go down 1, so it exploded here. There's an open spot here, it exploded here. It tries to explode through this wall, but there's a wall there, so it does 1 damage. Now remember, if there's 2 cubes here, this is an open passageway, and it would have went right there. But since there was only 1, we put a 2nd damage there. Now, it can't go here, but there's a shock wave. There's already fire here, so instead of it just stopping, it goes all the way through, and it will blow this door, boom, right out. If where I had rolled was here, and then there's nothing next to it, usually when you advance a fire, it's going to be smoke. Now, smoke is okay if it's not surrounded by any other fire. It just sits there as smoke. We'll talk about extinguishing those later. If the smoke had been put here by the roll of the dice, because smoke is next to fire, it always becomes fire immediately. Those are the 3 different ways that fire advances itself. Now let's say it's somebody else's turn and we realize that this guy's going to be out here on the next turn, but you need an ambulance there in the advanced game in order to save them. There's an ambulance here. It costs 2 action points movements to move it to the next adjacent blue spot right there. So it cost whoever's turn it was 2 actions to move the ambulance. If you wanted to move the fire truck, you could move it over here for 2 action points, but since there's firemen here, there actually has to be somebody in the truck in order for them to move it. So it would cost them an action to move into the truck if they're not already on it, and then another 2 to move it to somewhere else. That's another thing you can do on your turn. Now let's say we were right here. Another thing you can do on your turn is extinguish smoke or fire. It costs 1 to extinguish a fire to smoke, and another 1 to extinguish smoke to gone. So essentially, to get rid of a fire that you're adjacent to costs 2 action points. If I have some smoke somewhere, let's say I was here, there was a smoke here, then if I wanted to get rid of this, it would just be 1 action point. If I've done all the things I want to do in my turn and it doesn't make sense for me to do another one, you can save action points. So let's say I've used 3, but I want to save 1 for later. I can keep this, and now next turn I could use all my 4 like normal and an additional 1. So you can start to save up some of these action points for later. The other thing you can do is chop. So sometimes it might make sense to actually make a hole in a wall. So I might chop here for 2 action points, chop here for another 2 action points, and now I can go through this wall. This is useful if there's a person of interest, maybe on a wall that doesn't have a door near it and you want to get to it from the outside. Sometimes it's good to chop, but again, it's kind of hurting yourself too, because if you have 24 of those chop marks on the building, it collapses and you lose. In the advanced game, there's also these things called flare-ups. You see these little hot spots here, these little small ones here. You start with a certain amount of them. There's a certain amount used depending on the difficulty of the game. But let's say when we advanced the fire, we would have gone here. This would be an explosion. Well, like normal, this would have exploded through here and it crushed this door open. It would have come through here and made a mark there. It would have gone here and it would have put a mark here. Now, because there was a hot spot there, you have to re-roll again and advance the fire 1 more time. So it would go to 6 and 1, which is down here, and another explosion would happen. And you can see how quickly things can get out of control as you start going through this game here. Now, because the initial one that we rolled was a hotspot, we have to now put another hotspot where the next fire was, right there, boom. So sometimes these hotspots and flare-ups can start going all over the board, and it just makes it really hard. Now there's some levels of difficulty here where you'll have 1 or multiple hazmats. These they're making it a lot harder because if some fire gets here, it will explode like a normal fire explodes. Plus, if you're trying to carry it out, it costs 2 points of action to move it instead of 1. Just like as if you're carrying a person, carrying the hazmat out costs. So it's hard to get out and it explodes very quickly. Now let's say it was this guy's turn and I moved him out here and I rescued him. And he went to our rescue pile. Yay! We're in the ambulance. Now, at the end of my turn, we would roll again to figure out where the next person would be, because you always have to have 3 points of interest on the board. We have 2 there. We roll again, and we see a 5 and a 2, which puts it here. Now, they can't put a person in where the fire is, but there's little arrows on the board that show you where you can put it. And it kind of guides you to where to put it. And it says, well, put it here. Okay, I'll put it there. And if it's not if that's not there, you follow the arrows all the way around to put him where he needs to go. And that's where the next point of interest is. The last thing you can do really is fire a gun, a water gun from the truck. So if you have somebody in the truck over here, and you see that this board is made of different quadrants of red lines. So this is a quadrant here. You can't have any other fire people in this quadrant. You have to have somebody on here, and it costs all 4 action points to shoot the fire gun, the water gun. And when you roll it, we have a 5 and a 1. Well, 5 is here and 1 is here, boom, and it hits this. So it actually hits this, and almost like a reverse explosion, all the adjacent ones, the fire gets out. So this can help you a lot. If you happen to roll where it's kind of in a different quadrant, it allows you to flip the dice to the other side to get it at least in the same quadrant and see if it does that for you. It costs a lot of action points, but you can get rid of a lot of fire pretty fast. So turn by turn, you're going around cooperatively trying to help each other, coming up with ideas, and working together to try to get 7 people saved before 4 people get killed, or we have 24 damage done to the building. Let's take a look at the special action. For 1 action point, you can also move a closed door to an open door, which now allows me to go through here and see if this one's real. Oh, it is a lady. And then you might want to close it to stop the fire from going that way really fast. Now here's some of the special rolls. So this guy, the CAFS firefighter, he only gets 3 action points instead of 4, the normal, but he gets 3 free extinguishing AP. So he gets to use 3 free extinguishing plus 3 more. The paramedic, they get 4. They get to treat a victim as 1 AP. When they treat them, they get to walk with you. So they only cost 1 movement to move them because you're leading them as opposed to carrying them. It's pretty cool. The driver and operator, you get 4, but it only costs you 2 to use the fire gun, which is pretty cool. We have the imaging technician, which allows you to look over. You spend 1 and you can look over all the points of interest, all of them on the board that are like that. You can flip them over and see which ones are fake and which ones are real. He gets 4 action points. Pretty cool. Hazmat technician that can dispose of the hazmat for 2. Removes it right from the game. Fire captain, they get 2 free commands, so they get to essentially move other people or do other people's movements other than themselves instead of the captain ordering people around. They get 2 of those free movements per round. The generalist does nothing special, but he gets 5 action points per turn. And we have a rescue specialist who they get 3 movement action points that are free. So they're really good at moving in and chopping. Chopping only costs 1, so they're good at moving in and rescuing people out. And those are some of the special abilities in the game. All right, there is Flashpoint Fire Rescue. I typically am a pretty big fan of co-ops. I have a bunch of them in my collection. I do like them. I don't often have that alpha gamer syndrome that some people talk about. I haven't really run into it too much. This is a good, solid co-op game. I'd say, it's kind of like in between Forbidden Island and Pandemic, I would say. It's definitely got a lot more to it with the advanced game than Forbidden Island would. It may have as much going on as Pandemic, but there's a little bit of randomness there, whereas you're rolling dice to figure out where the next explosion or fire is going to happen versus pulling cards and you know which ones have already been pulled. So there's that difference there, and it's different enough from, say, Pandemic from a mechanic standpoint that it's okay to have both of them. I'm definitely keeping both. But if you have a kid who has kind of outgrown Forbidden Island, but he wants a good, deeper co-op, but a theme that they like, or is easier to get into, this is a great game for that and with families. Now, Pandemic is about saving the world, but at first, looking at the box and hearing about diseases, it might shy parents away from playing that with a kid or a younger kid from playing it. So I think this is a good happy medium between Forbidden Island and Pandemic that has great mechanics. I love how thematic ways that you're using action points. It costs more action points to go through fire to carry to people than it is just to go normally. You can chop things, you can open doors, you can call the paramedics over to get them. You can go to the fire truck and use the fire gun to shoot out all the fire. It's very thematic, and I loved how it matched that. I love the special powers, how everyone has a unique ability. The randomness is the only thing I didn't like as much. I'd rather have a little less randomness, but it didn't deter me. I usually like less randomness, but it didn't make me not want to play again. I definitely like this. I think it's a solid co-op. If you like co-ops, you got to check this one out. It's good for families and good for gamers. What else could you ask for? If you like co-ops, you're going to have to check out Flashpoint Fire Rescue.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.